I swear, you actually have to do something. All this and more on the Self-Evident Podcast. Welcome to the Self-Evident Podcast. You got Mike. Guys, this is going to be a great show. I got a special guest for you. By all means, do not forget to go to theselfevidenttruth.com. Check out what we have going on. Get yourself a shirt. Maybe you want to become a torchbearer. And we're just so grateful for all of you guys, everything you do. And we're thankful that not only can we bring cultural issues, we bring theological issues, spiritual issues. And I'm going to go ahead and just plow right into this. I know that's a short intro, but I think you guys are going to want to hear this. I've got a great guest with us today. I'm going to pull up his bio. So I have today T.W. Norman. He's the lead pastor of Little Chapel Church. He, along with his wife, Tina, and their 3 sons, started off their journey in ministry in 2005 and joined at LLC in 2017. TW and Tina have a passion for outreach and evangelism. Now, he believes very strongly in the work that God is doing in Southern Illinois. It says, our call is to partner with God's plan for discipleship. Our aim is to raise up followers of Christ empowered by the Holy Spirit to live and do all God has planned. And he came across my... I'm going to go ahead and bring you in right now, TW. So first, this is TW. Thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for allowing me the privilege. This is good stuff.
Absolutely, man. So I'll say it this way. You came across my nose because I recently started getting onto X and all of that. And you had a column that was posted. It was Clear Truth Media that had posted it. And it was about discipleship, discipline, right? And this is something that I've always been passionate about, but I've seen this kind of tussle in the spiritual realm. And what I appreciate is you have such a solid ministry background. I mean, you were telling me just before we got on air, you were connected tangentially with YWAM and doing some stuff through that. And so I want you to give guests just a 30-second background of your ministry experience and where you're coming from, because this is not somebody who you just, discipline, and oh, by the way, God's cool too, Yeah. So go for it, brother.
Yeah, man. So my wife and I, we started off just, working normal jobs early in our marriage. The Lord had been working on us, and we eventually left everything and joined YWAM, Youth with a Mission. Amazing heart and partnership there all over the world. But we traveled with a group called Team Extreme, and so I got to go all over the world for several years, breaking bricks, flipping over cars, preaching Jesus, seeing people saved, healed, and set free. And I just thought I would have been happy doing that forever. But then the Lord just started transitioning our heart towards the pastoral side of ministry. And that transition began in 2011 when we took our first position, and we've been pastoring ever since. And here we are, 2024. It seems absolutely wild that much time has passed, but man, we're hungry. We're fired up for what God is doing, and we can't wait just to continue on the journey.
Amen. So, to that point, and I want to get right into this concept of discipleship, or golly, I keep saying discipleship,
so
discipline, right? And they're really kind
of a word scramble.
Words.
That's all it is, right?
The worst is when you're typing and you want to write one, but you write the other. So discipline. I'll put it this way. So I did a video, this was about a week ago. And do you follow Andrew Huberman at all?
Yeah.
So he was on Rogan's podcast, and he's talked about this in other areas, but talking about there's an area of the brain that actually grows when you do hard things over a lifetime.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. The mid-anterior cingulate cortex, I think is what it's called. But over time, if you complete hard tasks that you do not want to do, that area grows. Now, on the inverse, if you don't do those tasks, if you shy away from those tasks, it shrinks. And to me, it's like, okay, why would God create that part of the brain if there wasn't some semblance of requirement of discipline in our lives, as opposed to he's going to do it all and just sit back because anything you do is not of God. And I'm wondering, have you run into kind of that mindset of like, oh no, this discipline, that's all works?
Oh man. Well, I think that, first off, I think you can build an incredible case spiritually, biblically, that we're called to be disciplined. I mean,
Right.
Paul tells us to train ourselves, as in our disciplines. I mean, that's just so biblically we can build that case to begin with. I think that we can easily like, dude, we can all spiritualize our dysfunctions, right? That's really what it comes down to. I mean, for a lot of us who are, are Christians. I mean, that's really all we do. We spiritualize the things that we shy away from. Well, the Lord hasn't called me to do it, or or whatever. We can say a lot of things, but the reality is, everything that God has given to us, it's all from God. We realize that. I mean, the breath in our lungs, the bodies we have, everything we have is a gift from God. But if we do not use the discipline that God has also given to us, maybe, and some have a smaller measure than ever, but regardless, whatever we're given, we're called to work it out. Come on, somebody, that'll preach right there. You got to
Right.
work it out. And the reality is, I'm called a steward of what God has given me. Like you're a steward. Whatever God has blessed us with, we're called to steward that well. And I feel without a shadow of a doubt that part of the formula in stewardship is discipline. Without discipline, I'm going to lose. I'm not going to develop what God has given me. Without discipline, I'm not going to enhance what God has given me. It all works together. So discipline is a major piece of stewardship that every single one of us are called to as followers of Christ.
Right. And you sparked something in me, that concept in Genesis of being a steward over the earth, right? Taking dominion over the earth, and God even says over every living thing. Well, that includes us too.
Absolutely.
Our own self. Like he created us to be a steward of what he's given us, right? And that
Mhm.
includes body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
And you kind of sparked there, like, well, yeah, we're a living thing, so we should probably be a steward over ourselves. And I think I'll pose it to you this way: what do you notice where, especially in Christians today, or especially the American West, where do you feel like, hey, we could improve on this discipline train? Let's say your own congregation or other congregation. It's like, hey, let's step up in this area in order to be good stewards of what God has given us.
Oh, man, that's a multifaceted question. Can I say everything? Is that
But
legal?
then you have to explain everything. So
Okay, well, we might. Well, I think obviously I think the easy answer here, the layup here, is our spiritual disciplines. I mean, you know, I love the church. God has called me to pastor the church, the local body, and I really do believe that the local church is part of God's answer for the world. I mean, really, I mean I believe that with all of my heart. But I also have seen, and I think that most would agree, that the local westernized church is pretty lazy. We want things given to us.
right.
It's except for my church. My church is absolutely perfect. I mean, my people are amazing. You should come visit. You'd be amazed. But
They're all listening,
yeah, that's
waiting.
right. That's right. You all are amazing. Um, but that's the reality. It is unfortunately, the church has taken on a see what I can receive
Mhm.
model, and it's self-serving, and I think a lot of times it's even like a giant buffet. Come for what you like, leave what you don't, and I think that has spilled into the normal day-to-day life, and so I think first and foremost, being intentional to develop the spiritual disciplines. I tell our church all the time, man, God will start the fire, but
Amen.
we have to be intentional to keep it burning. Like what God does in me, man, that God is faithful. He's faithful to start it and he's faithful to complete it. But what I do in the middle is essential for it to happen. For that, I feel like every promise of God, there are some things that God has promised that you can't mess up. Jesus is coming back. His kingdom will come in the full measure. It will be established. But then there are some things that God has promised to us, or things that God has shown us individually and corporately, that it requires responsibility on my part. And part of that responsibility is discipline, and it's discipline to steward it. It's the importance of pursuing what God has called us to, going after those things. I think that my hope and my faith is resounded and resting in the fact that it is God who completes the promises, but I've got a responsibility in the process of that promise. And I think that comes back to the disciplines that we're developing spiritually, the disciplines that we have to develop physically, emotionally. It's all tied together, because I feel like there's an end game that God is calling us to. There's an end to it, and I say it like this: it's for our good and His glory, and that's the process that He's calling us to.
Right. And I think about like Abraham. If he wouldn't have stepped out of his father's home, his father's town, and gone off, the promise of God wouldn't have been fulfilled.
Absolutely.
Right. And so there is that discipline of like, what has the Lord told you? Okay, carry this out and do this. And I think I get frustrated when I see this messaging, because I think when it gets down to it, I dealt with it in a spiritual sense. When I was younger, I heard so often, you can do nothing of yourself. You can do nothing. Anything you do is works. It's all the Lord. You have to just have faith. He's going to do it all. And I struggled with that, because it was like, well, okay, so do I sit on the couch? Like, if I try to do something, does that mean that I'm trying to counteract God? And so I had this real battle within me, this dilemma of like, what does it mean for me to trust in the Lord and have faith in Him, but is there a part or a role for me to play? And I look at these fathers of the faith in the Old Testament, and it's like, man, these guys had to step out at some point. Like, they had to actually take action on what they were told, or they had to be good stewards of what God has given them. And then God filled it in. God created the abundance. God grew it, right? But you had to plant the seed.
I think that the beautiful thing that God has invited us into is partnership, really.
Right.
That's really it. We're partnering with the will of God. It's God that does it. So like I think both, it's this, is it the two sides of the same coin that, I don't know for sure, but God does it all. We recognize that, but in God's like ability to do everything, He still lets us partner with what He's going to accomplish and what His will is. I told the story one time in church that I was my oldest son was younger, and I was changing the tire on the lawnmower, and you had to lift it up and do all this stuff, and you were riding a lawnmower, and my son was out there helping me, right? He was like 4 years old, and and I let him like take just do the little things that he could. Yep. And he comes inside, and my wife asks him, "Hey, what were you doing?" He goes, "Nothing. I was just changing the tire on the lawnmower." And it's like, I think
awesome.
That's kind of how it is with God, right? It's like we have this incredible God who invites us into partnering with what He's doing, and man, He's doing it, but we get to we have a part to play, but really it's for His glory, and there's just a little bit of partnership there, and I think that He loves to do that. That's just the nature of a really, really good father. And I didn't tell my son, I didn't say, "Titus, you didn't do anything." I was like, "Yep, he did. He did awesome.
I did it all. He did nothing."
Honey, give me my plate first. I really made that. Yeah, no, it was no. I was his biggest champion, man. I was his biggest cheerleader. He did awesome. Anyway, so
man, I love that analogy, and that's so good. Of like, he built us, He designed us to put our hand to the plow for sake of
yeah, absolutely.
And so it's like, we get satisfaction, we get contentment, we get value out of working. There's just something in us, especially as men, that work provides a deep inner contentment. And
Mm,
so it's like, why would God put that in us if that's wrong? But I love the imagery that you give of like, man, if our own son walks in, and dude, my sons do this, you know, especially my 3-year-old. He does something cool. He puffs his chest out. He walks, you know, like he is just the man. And it's not like I'm going to come in after him and go, honey, don't even pay attention to him. All he did was hold a screwdriver. He's not,
yeah,
you know, it's like, yep, he fixed the lawnmower.
that's
It
right.
was him, you know,
Right.
and I think, yeah, I picture that as really the relationship between Christ and the Father, you know, is like Christ is like, man, the glory is yours, Father. And
Mhm.
Father's going, I'm glorifying you because of what you did, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
and so I love that. I think that's something that we don't do enough with as Christians because we're in please by all means tell me what you think of this. I We get so focused on I have to make sure all of the glory is to the Father, which is true in a sense, but I think what ends up happening is we create a false humility in ourselves of like it was nothing of me. I didn't do anything. There was nothing in this of me. It was all the Lord. The Lord did it all. And meanwhile, the Lord's going, well, I mean, you did tie your shoes and you walked out the door. And
yeah. Oh man.
so I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
Well, I
piecing
think,
that out, you know,
yeah, I mean, I think that we can be, sorry, I jumped out of your frame there.
no, you're good.
Um, we can easily like take on this false humility all the while totally knowing what we're doing. And really, I think false humility is pride in disguise, really.
Right.
You know, I mean, because in either way, like I've done nothing, I'm nothing, I am, but I'm still the focus of my of everything there. And and I think that's ultimately God gets the glory. So
Right.
point the glory to the Lord, but at the same time, it's not prideful. In my opinion, it's not prideful to realize, man, God is amazing that he's doing all this and he's using someone like me to accomplish it.
Right.
In a small way. It's not because of me. It's not I'm not doing it. God is doing it. But here's the thing. God looks for those who are willing, available, and obedient. That's it. I
Amen.
mean, God can do incredible things with some really flawed people, because we're all that way. Every one of us, we all have our issues, but God can do incredible things if we're willing, available, and obedient. And I think that we see that throughout Scripture. I mean, that is literally the hope that we have is people who were not that much different than any of us, but they were willing, available, and obedient. I
Right.
mean, and you can see the flaws. I mean, I always love it when preachers preach to preachers, but I mean, you mentioned Abraham. I mean, dude had some flaws. David had some flaws. I mean, that they're every one of us are flawed. But boy, what could God do if we would just make ourselves available to his call, willing to say yes, and be obedient no matter what the cost? I mean, that's a great recipe for God to do incredible things.
Right. And man, I love it because you're sparking stuff in me. You think about Abraham and he was flawed, like you said. But I think so often people run from discipline because they think they have to be perfect. And
Sure.
I'm thinking in the physical realm, but this could obviously go out to the spiritual. It's like, well, I missed that workout yesterday, so I'm not disciplined. I can't get back on the wagon.
Mm,
And there's that like, nah, I'm not going to keep going because I'm not disciplined enough. Whereas obedience, you will be disciplined and you may fall off the wagon for a day or two, but you get back on. You're pursuing discipline.
hmm
You're being obedient to what you've been called to. And if Abraham had gone, well, I'm not good enough for that promise because I've screwed up sometimes,
Yeah.
he wouldn't be obedient to what God has called him to. And I know I'm kind of preaching right now, but it's just this stuff fascinates me because I've always been physical. I played sports growing up, lifting, all of that, and there's something gratifying about how it radiates outwards, and I have a question for you, but I didn't know if you had anything to add to that because I'm going to go a little bit different direction. But
Yeah, that's great. I will add just one thing,
yeah,
just to piggyback off of what you said there. One of the things you said, I think that you're right. One thing that hinders a lot of people is they see other people doing something like they would like to do, or something like they feel like they may be called to do, but they see them already at a super high level. And
right.
then the immediate thought is, well, I can't do that well. And so I'm not even going to begin. And I can like just transition that, just a really practical example. I'm a simple guy, I use simple things. You know, I have about 4 years ago, I started doing CrossFit, which is just
Yeah.
it's just a different way to work out that I've never done before, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And and it is a huge part. It's a huge part of my life, and I'm always inviting people. Man, you need to come try this out. It's I mean it's not a cult, but it's close. But
It's no barbed wire fences
that's right.
yet.
Yeah. No Kool-Aid in the corner. There is Fit Aid, but not Kool-Aid. Anyway, but I'm always inviting people to come and do it with me. And and my big core group of our friends do it. A lot of people from our church are starting to do it. But the one thing I always hear is, well, I can't do what you do. And
Right.
I'm like, I couldn't do what I do 4 years ago when I started. I mean, like no one can. Like everyone has to start exactly where they are. And that's the beauty of discipline, because discipline does not require perfection. Discipline really just requires consistency. And that's what I'm telling. Like I help coach our local sophomore football team, and it's a lot of fun. And I talk to these kids a lot, and that's what I'm telling. Like, well, how did you get to where you are? How did you get big? And I'm like, I just started stacking days together, man, when I was your
Right.
age. When I was 14, 15, and 16 years old, I started putting days together. And you know what? I didn't quit. That's really it. I mean, if you want to see progress in your life, spiritually, physically, whatever it is, if you want to see the scale go down rather than up, it all comes down to putting days together. Don't just do it one day. Don't just do it for 3 days. Get real, get consistent. That's really what discipline, I mean, discipline really just is being consistent. Discipline is consistency. Just continue to do the same thing correctly day after day after day after day, and you're going to see the results. That's,
Absolutely. And that's
I mean, I,
no, I love it. I love it because it's funny you mentioned like CrossFit. We've got a group of guys that every Saturday morning we're doing like functional training type
yeah.
stuff. And I grew up playing hockey, football, and then after that it was like, okay, well, what do I do next? So I started
Mm,
getting into powerlifting.
yeah.
And so of course, anything over 3 is cardio at that point. And it's like I I I got started getting older, and it's like, man, I've got to change my goals
Mm,
because sure I can keep chasing big numbers, but what's that going to do to my body and all that? And I kind of had to come to Jesus moment of like, okay, what should my goals be?
mm,
And so I started going down kind of the functional training route, and these workouts on a Saturday, it's not easy for guys to get up at 6:15 or whatever and be there by 6:45 and doing a really intense workout, and then we do a Bible study after. But it's like the camaraderie and the community of it and the discipline of it. And it's like I I understand people get afraid of that concept because like you were saying, but you see where somebody else is, and it's like true, but that may not be where you have to be.
yeah, that's
And
right.
and where's your consistency? Because I'll look at other guys in certain physical aspects, and it's like, well, I could pursue that with everything I am, but is that my lane? Is that where my
That's
goals
right.
should be?
Mhm.
And I think people they believe they have to be the epitome of something in a certain area. Well, to me, that's an easier way to just, well, I can't do it,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
right. Yeah.
So I don't I love that you're recognizing that and pointing that out because I think that's important for people listening to understand is like you you don't have to take somebody else's pathway, somebody else's lane,
Hmm.
and if we look at the fathers of the faith, they each had their lane in what they were doing. I think about David. David can't build the temple because he's a man of bloodshed. He's a
Hmm.
man of war. Now, God didn't say you're sinful because you're a man of war. He just said, I can't have you build my temple.
Yeah.
That'll be your son's lane,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a truth and a humility to recognizing and receiving the lane that you've got, but we've also got stewardship that we've got to take care of.
Right.
And I think I want to go further in that terms of the physical, because the physical is so fascinating to me. There's just so many lessons there. Do you see a growth of interest in the physical within the church, maybe even your church? I know you said you've got a group of guys. Are they mostly from your church that are doing that?
It would take too much time to say everything that the Lord has done within this little gym that that my best friend has started. It really just began, this gym that's now a business in our town, began out of discipleship. Really, I mean, I had kind of back in 2019. My wife and I, we just kind of went on a health rediscovery. Man, my wife had 3 kids. Those pregnancies absolutely kicked my butt. I never recovered from them for a long time. And then finally, I was just really convicted I need to get healthy, and I lost 86 pounds.
Good
And
for you, man.
in the process, I was really working with a guy in my church, doing some discipleship with him. So I'd lost all this weight, and in the process, I had really kind of just lost the joy in just going to the gym and laying on a bench press and doing reps and waiting 3 minutes in between sets. And he said, hey, so I'm doing discipleship with this guy, and a couple of guys actually at the same time, and they're both in my church, and he says, hey, my wife and I do CrossFit in our garage. You want to come over and do it with us? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be awful. Yeah, but it's an opportunity for a relationship, right? And so I
Right.
said, yeah, I'll come over and I'll do it. Well, the first day I did it, dude, I absolutely died. I mean, it was, death. I thought I could do more than I could really do. And I was laying on the ground in a puddle of sweat and absolute self-defeat. I mean, I was out. And he said, man, that was great. Do you want to come back tomorrow? And, I was shaking my head no, but out of my mouth comes, yeah, I'll be here. And that's really where it started. And then this other guy I was discipling, and I was telling him, I mean, we really need to be intentional, not just spiritually, but physically, because it all works together. So he started coming with us. Well, as I'm discipling my buddy Craig and his wife that have this gym in their garage, they come to me and they said, hey, we were going to buy another boat. We had this money set aside, but we feel like the Lord is telling us to open a gym and somehow use this to glorify the Lord. Is that possible? Can we do that? And
Is that allowed?
yeah, they're new believers, but man, the Lord is just like grabbing their hearts, and they like their honest question, like, can we do that? Can we open a gym that like somehow God can use? I'm like, heck yeah, you can. This is amazing. Well, they opened this gym and the gym began to grow, and now they moved to it. We expanded their barn and then just opened at their house at their big barn, and then it outgrew that, and now it's at another place in town. And we have people from all over the place coming to this gym, and we have people from the church going to the gym, but more incredibly than that, people start coming to the gym, and now they're around all of us, man, who love Jesus, who just live our faith out loud. And all of a sudden, our gym is becoming this like evangelism pool where people just get in and get around us, and we're doing hard stuff together. And now all of a sudden, the gym is becoming a funnel for our church, because they're just like, man, this is real. This is what it looks like to be around people who love Jesus, and they're real. They're real.
Right.
They're real people. And so I totally did not answer your question probably, but that's just kind of the story. You asked about the physical within the church and everything. I mean, I think that because there's such an intentionality from a lot of our leadership now, I think it's contagious. We have all kinds of people that are, jumping on this health journey that is, I mean, it's really important. And I think that, you get healthy, you feel better. And if you feel better, I feel like you have more energy to do what God is calling you to do. I think that it touches everything. I think I'm a better husband because I'm disciplined to exercise. I think I'm a better father. I have the energy. I think I'm a better pastor because I have the ability to work and the capacity to do more. I think it really impacts everything that I do.
Right. And I'm totally with you. Complete agreement. I think that crossover is so important. And I don't think a lot of people give it enough credit of, look, what you learn through all this process is something you can take with you down the road,
Mm.
you know. And I'm a firm believer of putting yourself in tough situations, struggle, adversity, all of that. You learn how to handle it, you learn how to persevere, you learn how to overcome,
Mhm.
which helps carry across to other things and other domains. And I've been noticing this too, and so this is an encouragement to me of there seems to be a reawakening of the complete focus, you know, body, soul, and spirit, as
Mhm.
opposed to, I think probably 10, 20 years ago, it was more, no, spiritual is over here and we leave that in this realm.
Yeah.
And then you guys, you're chasing after the flesh by doing this stuff.
Mhm.
And I love the purity and the humility of that couple coming to you like, can we do this? Like that's awesome, but it's so pure of like, I want to honor God, but I feel like maybe I'm, and it's like, of course, because look how God is bringing people together,
Exactly right.
teaching them values, and guaranteed those people are growing spiritually if they're disciplined in those other realms. And so I just love this concept that you're confirming and reaffirming what I'm noticing down here. I'm noticing in other areas, like there seems to be a resurgence of people recognizing I can't just be comfortable anymore. I can't
Mhm.
be lazy, you know, and that gets down to food, you know, it gets down to small choices every day.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer. I don't know if you've looked into this, but I'm a firm believer of what you eat can limit your spiritual position in
Mhm.
terms of, look, if we're going to eat toxic food all day, we're going to eat processed food, our gut biome changes, right? Which affects our hormones.
Mhm.
Well, if our hormones are out of whack and imbalanced, then if you're depressed and apathetic and lethargic all day every day, well, how much do you really want to seek the Lord?
Mm.
How much do you want to get into the spiritual?
Yeah.
And I've seen people, well, if you're depressed and lethargic and apathetic, you need to pray to the Lord to overcome that. That may be, but if you're chugging 2 liters of Mountain Dew and you're eating Taco Bell every day, like
Yeah.
is God saying, hey, clean up your diet a little bit and you
Yeah.
might be able to hear me a little better?
That's right.
So I don't know. Have you thought about that at all?
Man, I think that again, this is a bigger conversation in a lot of ways. Because the Lord, I firmly believe it is God's will that we are healthy,
Yeah.
really. And I think that there is a supernatural touch that God is able to give to us. I mean, I firmly believe that God still heals, that God does all these incredible things. I've seen him do amazing things, but man, it comes back to stewardship and the ability to actually get the most out of what he's given to us. I mean, our diet is so important. You know, what are your food is your fuel. I mean, that's not a heavy revy or anything right there, but
Right.
it's absolutely true. And being able to, gosh, God has created us to function at a really, really high level. We do a disservice oftentimes to the capacity that God has placed within each one of us because of the way that we take care of ourselves. And a lot of people, I know that, and my grandma would be one of them, man. I love her with all my heart. But anytime a pastor would ever talk about, you know, our health, she's exactly like you were talking about. Well, that doesn't have any place in church. But really, it has a really big place because again, I believe that God has created us in his image for a high capacity. And we have the ability, we should be very intentional with the way that we steward that in order to get the most out of it. You know, we live in the westernized world that says if you don't feel good, then we're not even taught, unfortunately, to address the issues, like the real issues that are conflicting the nature of our biology. What we're taught is to go get a pill. And and that's, and again, I'm thankful for medicine. I'm not an anti-medicine guy, but I'm saying, you a lot of times the emotions that we experience are not because there's a chemical imbalance in our brain that really needs medication. Sometimes it is, and praise the Lord that there's people a lot smarter than me that have created compounds that can help that. But a lot of times it is the fact that we are fueling ourselves with absolute poison, and it messes us up. And so instead of doing the things that are necessary, we can go this other route and start utilizing something that we really don't need. And now we're compounding interest negatively, because everything that we take, there's usually some side effects to different things. And now we're having to redirect something that this is causing. But dude, I mean, let's get back to the way that God has made us. Let's be healthy in the way that we eat, what we consume, and let's be active. I mean, just those two things. We do those two things. I'm telling you, everything begins to change. I mean, you mentioned our hormones, man. Our hormones get out of whack, and it causes depression, it causes anxiety, it causes all kinds of irrational stuff. But whenever we get back in line, dude, I'm telling you, we're better. We are a
Right.
better representation of who God has called us to be. And I hope I'm not making anybody upset there, but
It's
that's
okay. We make people upset all the time.
okay.
So
Well, then we're in good company then.
yeah, because
Okay.
this conversation topic. So we as a ministry, we're very cultural focused, government focused, history focused, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But we also recognize and appreciate and like delving into these aspects of discipleship, which discipleship, you're helping people discipline themselves in a certain area or process, and we feel
Yeah.
like that becomes so important as a building block to help get people active in their community, however that looks. If it's governmental, awesome. If it's social, awesome. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Have you seen, as especially this gym culture grows in your community, have you seen the people that are connecting with your church and all of that start to become a little more community focused in some way, and in terms of, okay, what does the Lord have for me in terms of doing, for the community, whether it's I don't know, serving the homeless or that kind of thing? Have you noticed kind of a growth in that as well?
I don't know that it's necessarily directly connected to the gym aspect of it. I mean, one of the points of our mission is connection. I mean, we're
Mhm.
we're going to be a connection driven church. I mean, I think that we connect with the Lord whenever we're connecting with others. I mean, I think that God's made us to be together. We're a very intentional body to reach out into our community. So I don't know that I could definitely or necessarily point the gym to being a correlating aspect to that. I do feel like the gym is an aspect of connection
Yeah.
that people gather around, that definitely has deepened relationships. Our gym also, the gym itself functions really as a paraministry of the church a lot of times. I mean, the
Amen.
gym gets involved in a lot of community outreach as well. So, I mean, it really is. I feel like it's a paraministry, just an extension of who we are, because there's so many of us that are actually a part of that. And so, I think it's just the church outside the church outside of the church, really.
That's cool. And yeah, I mean, the the culture of that place, in, hey, we're going to do these events, or we're going to reach out or do these donations, that kind of thing, like that is an extension of your church for sure. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, and I pray that it grows and plants more little seeds of hubs, because I don't know, and I'm not prophesying, I just kind of, what I'm seeing is, I think it's cool how the Lord is growing up more and more little hubs,
Mm,
in a community. So it's, you've got the main base at the church, but then you're also seeing more and more of these groups, or these and I don't want to say unorganized, these unofficial, little seeds that
mm,
are growing into community aspects and
yeah.
outreach. And so that's cool that you guys are witnessing that in real time.
Really neat. Yeah.
So usually what I do to round out an interview is I'd like for you to give one thing directly to the audience that you think they need to pull away from this conversation. What's your one piece for the audience?
Embrace hard things. Don't shy away from them. This is a discipline that needs to be developed. Quit chasing comfort. Comfort is the enemy to progress. And so again, I use the gym example, man. Oftentimes, the hardest thing I do every day physically is at 6:30 in the morning every single day. I go to the gym. Every day it hurts, but I do it, and I put myself in a position to be very uncomfortable. And what I have found is that by choosing to be uncomfortable, it makes being uncomfortable easier, if that makes sense. And so I choose to embrace the hard conversations. I choose to embrace the things that are challenging because the if I don't embrace them, they're not going to get done. And so I think that there is an aspect of personal responsibility and accountability that I would encourage every single listener and everyone who's watching to just pick it up and say, I'm going to choose to do hard things today. And it doesn't have to be, our hard things can be different. Maybe your hard thing today is having a conversation that's overdue. Maybe your hard thing today is to pick 3 things that you've been procrastinating, that you've been putting off, that need to get done, and you just go do them. It's just find something hard and do it, because doing hard things creates momentum. If you do something hard, the next thing on your list that's not as hard, it's going to be easier to accomplish. And so I just think that we need to be intentional to create something in us that embraces the hard things and go after them and get them done, because you were made for this.
Amen. I love it. All right, TW, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate this, man.
Hey, man, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for reaching out to me.
Absolutely. So, all right, brother, you have a good day, okay?
God bless.
All right, God bless. So, guys, by all means, go check out TW Norman. Man, sometimes you get those guests like, yeah, exactly, right in line. So thank you so much for everybody tuning in. By all means, go to theselfevidenttruth.com, check out the merch, go to the donate tab if you feel like becoming a torchbearer. And we're just so grateful for all of you